It started with a last-minute pressure campaign by Republican lawmakers and parent groups. It ended 48 hours later, last Monday, when the State Board of Education scrapped a plan to block what was described as parents' extravagant spending with school vouchers. The Arizona Senate's Republican Chief of Staff had warned board members that proposed changes in a new Empowerment Scholarship Account handbook restrict the program further than the legislature intended. The legislature has not set any restrictions on items used for educational purposes. A team led by School Superintendent Tom Horne's ESA director drew up the proposed handbook for next year. Tom Horne joins us. Welcome back to Square Off.
Good to be with you, Bram.
Now, you made the motion at the board meeting last Monday to put the 2024-25 handbook on hold and keep the current one in use. Had you signed off on the proposed 24-25 handbook?
Yes, I had, and the problem was that parents felt they had no opportunity for input. It had been posted for a week on the Board of Education website, and we got like 100 pages of comments and made some adjustments for them. But a lot of parents said they didn't know they needed to sign in. We should have sent them emails letting them know. And I agreed with that. I'm all about transparency. So we put that off. But you should know, Bram, that all the important things in there are things that we're already doing. We're just putting it in the handbook so everybody would know. But we've been denying luxurious items, winning arbitrations over that. We're doing the things that are necessary to keep everything reasonable. My philosophy is that expenditures have to be for a valid educational purpose and consistent with legislation.
So didn't you know then that parents, if this was the case, parents had not received feedback? And I should add, last year there were far more parents who objected to the handbook, and it went through just fine.
Well, it seemed to me reasonable to make sure all parents knew that they could give us input. Many did. As I say, we got 100 pages of input and we made adjustments for it. But it doesn't affect the fact that we're keeping it reasonable. In fact, Bram, you've been, I think, at meetings of the State Board where I get attacked by 40 or 50 people at a time because they preferred the old lax system under my predecessor, and I was making sure that all expenditures are reasonable, are a valid educational purpose, and are consistent with legislation.
I want to go back to the email I mentioned from the Senate Chief of Staff because that strikes me as important. It was sent to every school board, Board of Education member, including yourself, on the Friday at 6 p.m. before the Monday meeting. Do you agree that there are no restrictions on educational expenses?
No, I don't agree, and I think they have to be reasonable. They have to be a valid educational purpose. They have to be consistent with legislation, and you know that, Bram, because you were at meetings where I got attacked, as I mentioned, by 40 or 50 people for cracking down on abuses on the system.
So you don't agree. It appears that the Senate, and Senator Jake Hoffman in particular, tried to steamroll the Board of Education and your department. You had this handbook that John Ward, your ESA director, had worked pretty hard on,
yes,
I would imagine.
And that I approved.
And that you approved, right. You read, you're on top of it.
Yeah.
Why was the white flag run up and just set this aside and let's keep the old one?
Well, I don't view it as a white flag. I view it as respect for input from parents. I'm all about transparency. And what didn't happen was an email didn't go out to all the ESA parents. Many knew to check the website, but not all. But I'm still doing the things that we need to do. I'm still making sure that expenditures are reasonable and winning arbitrations over that.
Here's the deal. So the draft handbook had dozens of newly unallowable expenses that will now be allowable.
I don't know yet. Have to give me examples because we're not allowing expenses.
Okay, Amazon Prime fees were not going to be allowable. Now they're allowable. Assembly or installation fees, bedding, cancellation fees, children's car seats, consultation fees, dining, footwear.
Now, when you say allowable, there's nothing in the handbook that forbids them.
This was in the draft handbook.
Yes, I know.
And that is no longer in effect.
No, but what I'm saying
because frankly, I think that the idea that the parent protest was the issue, I think that's a red herring. I think the issue is what the Senate said, that you've got to let a lot of stuff go. Parents were upset by this, yes, they may not have felt their voices were heard. Understandably, they should be heard.
Yeah. No, they definitely, I mean...
But this was led by the former ESA director, Christina Curso, who lost her job because she was implicated in a data breach. That was quite a scene there. You had your former ESA director criticizing your work.
Well, I think the point is we are making sure that the expenditures are reasonable. He gave examples of things that we actually denied.
He did. I want to read those. A $15,000 luxury wristwatch, $5,000 massage chairs, $24,000 golf simulators, a $2,400 food freeze dryer. So those expenses will still be rejected?
Yes.
Even with Jake Hoffman looking over your shoulder, Senator Jake Hoffman?
Jake Hoffman is one of 90 legislators.
But what about these pretty basic expenses?
Graham, on the food processor, it was an industrial level food processor that could process 100 pounds of meat, and we denied it, and they appealed, and the arbitrator held in our favor. And so we are making sure everything is reasonable. I don't agree that anything goes. These are appropriations for a valid educational purpose, and you know how I've been attacked by parents, 40 or 50 at a time at state board meetings for cracking down on what I considered abuses. One of the arguments on the food processor was that the previous administration had allowed that. I'm not allowing things that are unreasonable.
But here are dozens of things that were not going to be allowed that are now allowed that John Ward and his team thought should not be allowed.
Well, if they're unreasonable, they'll still be not allowed. It may not be in the handbook, but it still won't be allowed if it's unreasonable.
Still won't be allowed. If the legislature intended for this to be the law, that all education, there would be no restrictions, why didn't they put it in the law? Well,
you can't say there are no restrictions. The purpose of the law was to provide parents a choice of schools that...
But that's the Chief of Staff's language, no restrictions.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree?
No.
Okay. We will have to see how this all plays out.
We will continue, Ram, I guarantee you, we will continue to be ensure that all expenditures are a valid educational purpose and are reasonable. And even though at state board meetings, you know, out of 75,000 families, we get 40 or 50, which is a small percentage. But they, as you've seen, they take turns attacking me personally, and I can't respond under our rules. But I continue to be sure that all expenditures are reasonable.
But Amazon Prime fees are now okay.
Well, I'll have to see the case. The fact that it's not in the handbook.
Footwear is okay.
The fact that it's not. The fact that it's not in the
handbook. With taxpayer dollars.
Bram, the fact that it's not in the handbook doesn't mean that it's okay. In each case, we will judge: is it a valid educational expenditure, and is it reasonable? And that's what I've been doing, and you've seen me get attacked for that.
All right, Tom Horne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bram.